The late afternoon light spilled into my home office, dragging long shadows across the floor and highlighting the clean lines of the modern furniture. The walls were dotted with awards I had picked up over the years for my work in architecture. I was 44, standing behind my desk, 6 feet 2 inches tall, the kind of build you keep only if you get up before the sun and make the gym a priority even when work is crazy. My eyes, a cool shade of gray, stayed locked on my wife, Serena. She was pacing, clearly gearing up for something. Her movements were too precise, too practiced, like this moment had played out in her head a dozen times already. "Aren't you going to say anything?" she snapped, her voice sharp and edgy. She had come here expecting me to lose it, maybe shout, maybe beg, maybe break down. But I just stood there, calm as ever. That seemed to throw her off. "About what exactly?" I asked, keeping my tone flat, my gaze steady. I took in the designer outfit she was wearing, probably bought with my credit card just a few days ago. "The affair with Damon? Or the fact you tried to steal my designs?" She hesitated, just a flicker of it, then flipped her dark hair back over her shoulder like she had not just been caught. "Oh, so you know about Damon? Good. That makes this easier." Her red lips curled into a grin that held no kindness. "Your brother's everything you are not. Bigger. Stronger. Knows how to treat a woman." I did not move, but I caught the slight shake in her hand. She always had that little tell when she was bluffing ever since we met 15 years ago. It showed up at poker nights, and here it was again. "That all?" I asked, keeping my voice measured. Her voice climbed a notch. "I'm leaving you for your twin brother, and that's your response? That all?" She stepped closer, heels clicking on the hardwood like a metronome. "Damon promised me a huge share of your family's company. We are moving into his beach house, you know, the one with the ocean view you never could afford because you were too busy being the good guy with your projects." I felt the corner of my mouth twitch. "You mean the beach house he paid for by stealing money from the company?" I said quietly. "That one." For a second, she looked shaken. Then she scoffed. "You were lying. You were just bitter because Damon knows how to enjoy life. You are too obsessed with your precious bridges." "My bridges," I repeated dryly. "Paid for every single thing you were wearing." My eyes dropped to the sapphire ring she had on her finger, the one Damon gave her last month. The one she thought I had not noticed. She instinctively moved to cover it with her other hand. "My parents already gave us their blessing," she went on, a smug look settling on her face. "They always believed Damon was the one who should have been running the firm. They are just too scared to admit it out loud." I turned to my computer, done with the conversation. "If that is everything, you can leave. I have work to get back to." She spit the word like it disgusted her. "Work? You mean that earthquake-resistant bridge design? Damon says it will never work. He says it is full of flaws. You are pathetic, Lucas. A boring, miserable workaholic who never learned how to live or please a woman. Damon is twice the man you are." I kept typing, the soft sound of keys clicking under my fingers filling the room. "Close the door behind you." She stood there for a second longer like she was hoping to get something more out of me. But when it became clear she would not, she spun around and stormed out. The door slammed so hard behind her, my awards rattled on the wall. I waited 5 minutes, listening to the sound of her car start and drive off. Only then did I pull up my secure email and send off a message I had written weeks ago to a contact of mine over at the Federal Bureau of Investigation in their white-collar crime division. Later that night, I sat alone in my private study. The glass of single malt beside me stayed untouched. My eyes were fixed on the monitor showing live feeds from my security system. Even in the dark, the infrared cameras made everything crystal clear. I scanned through months of saved footage, evidence I had been quietly collecting. January 14th. 2 in the morning. Damon and Serena walking into my office with a key I never gave them. March 3rd. Damon snapping pictures of documents on my desk while Serena stood watch. April 17th. Damon at my computer while Serena kept me distracted with a fake emergency call about some production problem. I had installed the cameras after a string of break-ins at places where I stored sensitive blueprints. I told people it was just me being overly cautious. But I had seen the signs long before. Serena disappearing without a real excuse. Damon showing sudden interest in my work. Certain files being accessed while I was out at conferences. The video confirmed every gut feeling I had ignored. My brother was not just sleeping with my wife. They were both trying to steal the biggest thing I had ever built, my latest bridge design. A project that could change how we build in earthquake zones. A knock pulled me out of the footage. I checked the security screen. Rachel Monroe stood outside my study. We had been friends for 20 years. She was also our legal counsel. But right now she looked nervous, her posture stiff, gripping her high-end handbag like it might save her. Come in, Rachel, I said without getting up. She stepped inside, still holding that bag tight. Lucas, I need to tell you something, she said. Her voice was tense. She stayed standing, knuckles white around the leather strap. I will save you the trouble, I replied, turning my monitor so she could see the footage for herself. 6 months ago, Damon asked you to help him transfer my patents into a fake company he made up. And you agreed, even though you knew it was illegal and that it went against every rule you are supposed to follow as my attorney. Rachel's face went pale, like all the blood had drained out of her. How did you find out? I gave her a cold, humorless smile. I have known for months. I just wanted to see how deep you all were willing to dig the hole. Turns out pretty deep. Lucas, please, she said, her voice shaking. Let me explain. Damon told me your parents were worried about you, about your mental health. He showed me documents, they looked real. I stayed calm, but she instinctively took a step back like she knew she had already lost. You can save the explanations, Rachel, I said quietly. Go ahead and show yourself out. And expect a letter from the state bar first thing tomorrow morning. You cannot do this to me. Her calm completely cracked. Her voice broke like glass under pressure. We have been friends for 20 years. I stood by you at your wedding. Yes, I said, turning back to my monitor, keeping my voice steady. Which makes what you did even more fascinating, legally and ethically. I am sure the disciplinary board will agree. I did not even look up. Close the door on your way out. She stood there for a moment, stunned and speechless, her mouth opening like she wanted to say something but nothing came out. Then she turned and rushed out of the room. I waited until I heard her car pull away before reaching for my phone. A few taps on a secure app and I typed out a simple message. Everything is going according to plan. Begin phase 2 in the morning. The reply came fast. Federal Bureau of Investigation team standing by. Operation begins at 9 o'clock. I finally picked up the glass of whiskey beside me and took a slow sip, thinking about the board meeting scheduled for tomorrow. My parents would be there. So would Damon. They were probably getting ready to force me into some kind of leave, maybe even try to push me out completely. What they did not know was that I had been preparing for this moment for years. The trap was already in place. My phone buzzed again. It was Serena calling, probably looking to stir up more drama. I pressed the button to silence the call without even checking the screen. Tomorrow, they would all learn who they had really been dealing with. But tonight, I still had more security footage to go through. Brand Innovations' main offices took up the top 3 floors of a shiny skyscraper downtown, a building I had helped design back in the early days of my career. I got there 10 minutes before the board meeting was scheduled to start at 10 o'clock. My charcoal suit was crisp, every detail in place. I walked in calm and collected. The whole conference room went quiet when I stepped in. My parents, Gerald and Margaret, were already seated at the head of the table. Damon sat beside them. The 3 of them stared at me like I had just walked in from the grave. Guilty, shocked, maybe even scared. Gerald was the first to get a hold of himself. His voice tried to sound warm, but there was unease behind it. We did not expect to see you today, given the situation with Serena. We assumed you might need some time. I calmly placed my briefcase on the table and spoke clearly. Before we talk about my marriage, we have something else to deal with, something more important. I am talking about the unauthorized access to my engineering plans, the attempted theft of patents, and the fake company Damon set up to sell my work behind my back. Damon shot up out of his chair, his expensive tailored suit doing nothing to hide how flustered he was. You are making this up. Mother, father, he's losing it, just like I warned you. I tilted my head, keeping my voice even. That is an interesting reaction. Most innocent people ask for proof, not start shouting. Would you like to see the evidence, Damon? Because I have a lot of it. Rachel, seated at the far end of the table, jumped in, trying to salvage the moment. I am sure this is just a misunderstanding. Damon has been nothing but worried about you. Working too hard, becoming paranoid about security systems. I checked my watch, cutting her off. Well, the Federal Bureau of Investigation does not think it is a misunderstanding. In fact, they are quite interested in cases of corporate espionage. They should be arriving any minute now. Right on cue, the doors opened. 2 men in dark suits walked in, followed by a team of agents in jackets marked with bold yellow letters. One of them stepped forward, holding up a small black bag. I am Special Agent Nelson, he said firmly. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate espionage, embezzlement, and wire fraud. This is insane. Damon backed away, looking around the room in panic. Dad, do something. Gerald got to his feet, his face turning bright red. Lucas, stop this. He is your brother. He was my brother, I replied coldly. Now he is just a white-collar criminal about to go through the federal system. I recommend everyone here cooperate. Agent Nelson's team will need full access to our records. You cannot do this, Damon said, his voice cracking as the agents moved in. Mom, please. But Margaret just looked at me with tears welling up. Lucas, please. He is your twin. We can work through this together. As a family. Family? I echoed, giving her a look. That is an interesting word, considering everything that has happened. I turned to Agent Nelson. You will find all the evidence you need in that folder right there on the table. The agents took Damon out in handcuffs. His yelling echoed down the hall as the rest of us sat in silence. My parents just sat there, stunned. As the agents began unpacking their equipment and getting to work, I stood and adjusted my cuffs. One more thing. Given the situation, I have called an emergency board meeting for noon today. We need to discuss leadership changes. I suggest everyone review the company bylaws, especially the parts about removing officers involved in criminal activity. Without another word, I left the room, leaving them to sit in the mess they helped create. My phone buzzed again. Serena. She must have heard the news about Damon. I silenced it once more. The day was far from over. By tonight, every last person who betrayed me would know exactly who they had underestimated. As I stepped into my private office and closed the door behind me, I let a small smile slip through. Now the real work could begin. Back at the office, the buzz spread like wildfire. Damon Brandt's arrest was all anyone could talk about. Employees stood around in hushed groups, phones in hand, reading updates while the agents worked their way floor by floor through the building. From the window of his corner office, Victor Hale watched as Federal Investigative Bureau agents marched past, carrying box after box of documents. At 58, Victor had spent most of his career managing projects for Brandt Innovations. And as the years passed, his resentment toward me only grew. He hated the way I had climbed the ranks, faster and higher than he ever had. Now, with Damon behind bars and the entire company in an uproar, he saw his moment. My phone lit up with an incoming call. Serena Wyatt, no, correction, Serena Wyatt. She had dropped my last name the same day Damon was arrested. Fast move. I picked up without speaking. Tell me you have something we can use, she said. Her voice was clipped, sharp with desperation, but still holding that arrogant tone she never quite lost. Over in his office, Victor ran a hand through what was left of his hair and smiled. I've got more than that. I have proof Lucas has been screwing up major calculations. The kind of mistakes that could bring entire structures crashing down. Are you sure? She asked, clearly anxious. We need something that will stick. Damon's attorneys are a joke, and his parents are still in shock. Victor clicked open a file on his desktop labeled HeartLucasedits.pdf. Trust me, I have been collecting this stuff for months. Once the board sees these errors, they will have no choice but to remove him. I already called for an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Perfect, Serena said, and I could hear her smug little grin through the phone. Damon always said Lucas was unstable. Sure, he is brilliant but paranoid and delusional. If we show he is dangerous, the Federal Investigative Bureau investigation will just look like a breakdown. Victor picked up where she left off. And the board will need someone to step up, someone experienced. Someone like me. Serena's voice shifted into that fake sweet tone she used when she wanted something. I am sure Damon would be very grateful for your help. Once this little misunderstanding is behind us. Victor ended the call, practically glowing with self-satisfaction. He had waited years to see me fall. With doctored documents and a few tweaked files, he thought he could finally push me out. What Victor did not realize was that I had already seen the whole thing. Back at home, I sat in my office, watching it unfold on one of my monitors. Every word from their conversation had been recorded. Victor had no idea I had been monitoring his calls and video feeds for years. What people called paranoia, I called preparation. A gentle knock at the door pulled my attention away. Come in, I said. Maya-chan stepped in, my assistant for the past 8 years. She was as polished and professional as ever, but there was a shadow of concern on her face. The public relations team needs your response for the press inquiries, she said. And Mr. Hale has scheduled an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I gave a small smile. What is the official agenda? Maya hesitated. Questions about project safety and leadership stability. There are also rumors about your mental health. Apparently, Mr. Hale's assistant mentioned documentation of calculation errors. Of course he did, I said, then turned my screen so she could see. I pulled up footage of Victor meeting with executives from rival firms, handshakes, closed-door dinners, quiet conversations in hotel lobbies. Maya's eyes widened. That explains why the C projects were always behind. Delayed timelines mean extended contracts. Extended contracts open the door for kickbacks, I said, sending files to my secure backup server. The Federal Investigative Bureau will be very interested in Victor's offshore accounts. Should I cancel the board meeting? She asked. No, I said, with a smile that held no warmth. Let him have his moment. Just make sure each board member receives this evidence folder 10 minutes into his presentation. Maya nodded. I could see her respect grow in that moment. She had always been loyal, but now she understood why. And the press statement? Standard response, I said. No comment on ongoing investigations. She turned to leave, but I stopped her. Maya, thank you for not taking Damon's bribes. I know he tried. 3 times, she replied. I recorded each one. I know, I said softly. That is why you are the only person in this company I trust. After she left, I switched back to the other feeds. Across town, Serena was playing the role of heartbroken wife at some fancy restaurant. She was surrounded by people, loudly painting me as unstable to anyone who would listen. He has been getting worse for years, she was saying, her voice crisp through the restaurant's security audio. Another system I had tapped into months ago. Damon tried to warn everyone, but no one believed him. Now look what he has done to his own brother. I switched over to a live feed from the county jail. Damon sat in a visitor room wearing an orange jumpsuit. The usual confidence was gone. He looked like he was barely holding it together. You have to believe me, he was telling our parents. I was trying to protect the company from Lucas. He is not well. My mother, Margaret, reached over and patted his hand. Do not worry, sweetheart. Your father is calling in every favor he can. I shut the feed and glanced at the clock. In 12 hours, Victor Hale would walk into that boardroom, ready to bury me. In 13 hours, he would be the one buried. And that would only be the beginning. The next morning, the boardroom at Brandt Innovations was packed. The tension in the room was thick. Board members whispered among themselves while Victor stood at the head of the room, plugging in his laptop. He was confident, sure of himself, like this was the big moment he had been waiting for his entire life. I sat at the far end of the long table, silent, calm, watching. Serena sat up front, her outfit flawless, makeup perfect. She had red around her eyes, but they were dry as the desert. A far cry from the tears she had faked the night before. Victor cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming, he began solemnly. What I am about to show you is not easy, but it is necessary for the safety of our company and the people who rely on us. He brought up the first slide. It showed a set of complex engineering calculations with sections highlighted in red. These are taken directly from Lucas Brandt's earthquake-resistant bridge design, Victor continued. As you can see, there are serious flaws in the stress load analysis. Mistakes like this could lead to massive structural failure. I watched as members of the board leaned forward, squinting at the data. Frowns started to appear. Whispers turned into murmurs. But I stayed still, because the next 10 minutes would change everything. I watched closely, mentally taking note of everyone who nodded in agreement. They were on my radar now. This wasn't just some one-off screw-up. I clicked to the next slide and kept my voice steady. I've been tracking a steady buildup of serious errors over the past year, I said. And on top of that, there's been Mr. Brandt's increasingly erratic behavior, like opening federal investigations against his own brother. Before I could continue, Lucas's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Mr. Hale," he said, "can you explain why the timestamp on that document says it was edited last night at 11:47? I hesitated for just a beat. I was just adjusting the formatting. Lucas didn't flinch. He gave a small nod to Maya, who stood and started handing out folders to the rest of the board. "You might want to hold your questions," he said coolly, "until everyone's had a chance to go through the contents." The room got real quiet after that. The sound of paper rustling filled the space as everyone flipped open their folders. Serena leaned forward, trying to get a look at what was inside. I watched her jaw tighten as faces around the table shifted, first confused, then stunned, then furious. The head of the board looked up from his folder and locked eyes with me. "Mr. Hale, care to explain these bank transfers? And these emails arranging kickbacks from our contractors?" "That's not—" My throat dried up mid-sentence. My face probably went pale. "This is exactly what I've been talking about," Lucas said, calm as ever. "You all said my concerns were paranoia, but they're backed up with real evidence." He took a breath. "And all of this has already been submitted to the Financial Crimes Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They should be arriving right about now." Like it had been scripted, the boardroom door opened. 2 agents walked in. The one in front held out his badge. "Victor Hale," he said. "You'll need to come with us." "This is insane," I said, backing away from the table. "Serena, tell them. Tell them about Lucas, about his state of mind." But Serena wasn't standing by me anymore. She was already headed for the door. Whatever fake concern she'd been showing earlier had disappeared. Now her face was etched with real fear, the kind that hits when you realize you backed the wrong person. "Mrs. Brandt," the second agent called after her. "Please stay nearby. We will need to ask you about your involvement in these matters." I didn't say anything. I just sat there as they cuffed me and walked me out. I could still hear the board members sitting there in stunned silence, trying to absorb what they'd just seen. It was the same sound I remembered from yesterday when they took Damon away. Once I was gone, Lucas stood and straightened his tie like he was getting ready for just another meeting. "Now then," he said, "shall we talk about the actual status of our projects? You'll see all the calculations are accurate and independently verified." Over the next week, everything exploded at Brandt Innovations. I sat in my office, going over reports while Maya updated me on the fallout. Victor Hale's arrest had already hit the industry news cycle. Then came his confession, and with it 3 more project managers and 2 rival firms were pulled into the investigation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was digging deeper. "My parents are still trying to get Damon released," Maya said cautiously. Then she paused. "But there's something you need to look at." She handed me a tablet. "I found these while sorting the digital archives. Shared transfer agreements from 5 years ago. Turns out your parents secretly gave Damon 15% of the company." I studied the documents, keeping my face neutral. Did they really think I would not find out? "There's more," she said, pulling up another set of files. I cross-checked the dates with their tax filings. These transfers were never properly reported. And I found a trail of other tax issues going back over 10 years. I sent the files to a secure contact. The Internal Revenue Service would want to see every bit of it. "Should I arrange a meeting with your parents to talk about the transfers?" Maya asked. "No," I said, turning back to my screen. "They'll have bigger problems soon." Maya got the message and headed for the door, but paused. "Serena's been trying to reach you. Says she has new info about Damon." "I'm sure she does," I replied, voice cold. "Forward everything to the Federal Investigative Bureau tip line." Once she was gone, I opened my private email account. Within a few hours, an anonymous tip would reach the Internal Revenue Service outlining my parents' years of tax fraud. Their spotless public image? It was already starting to fall apart. My phone buzzed, a text from Serena. "Please, Lucas. We need to talk. I know things about Damon. Things you need to hear." I blocked the number without replying. Security footage on my screen showed Serena pacing in her hotel room, mascara streaked from crying. She looked like someone whose entire world had just cracked wide open. Then a soft chime, an email from my Federal Bureau of Investigation contact. "Second round of arrests scheduled for tomorrow. Surveillance confirms all target locations. Proceed as discussed." I typed a 1-word reply. Proceed. I had waited years to burn down the corruption rotting my family's company from the inside. And now, one by one, every betrayal was getting the payback it deserved. Later that night, an alert popped up on my home security system. 2 figures approached my front door. Damon, apparently out on bail, and Serena, both of them moving with the frantic energy of people with nothing left to lose. I sat in my study and watched on the monitor as they used Serena's old key to get into my office. They had no idea the silent alarm was already tripped. No clue the cameras were recording everything. "Find the designs," Serena said, breathless. Her time in jail had clearly taken a toll. She tore through drawers like a woman possessed. "If we can destroy the originals before the Federal Investigative Bureau gets to them." "They're not in the safe," she muttered, still rummaging. "Keep looking." Damon grabbed a stack of papers and started ripping them to shreds. "If we destroy these, it'll be our word against his," he said. "We can make this look like Lucas's just unraveling. Like he's lost it." That's when the office door locked shut with a loud buzz. Bright lights snapped on. The cops rushed in, weapons drawn. "Police! Hands where we can see them." I watched as they slapped the cuffs on both of them. Their expressions twisted from confusion to horror when they realized the documents they had just destroyed. Obvious fakes. Decoys. Exactly as planned. The real plans had been secured offsite months ago, along with backup copies of all the evidence against them. His phone lit up with a call from the police sergeant. "Mr. Brandt, we've apprehended 2 intruders. Would you like to press charges? The Federal Investigative Bureau will want to add this to their existing case." Lucas replied calmly. "I'll have my security footage sent over immediately." He ended the call, watching as Damon and Serena were led to separate police cars. Their betrayal had been complete, and now so was their downfall. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but his parents would soon face their own reckoning. Rachel's disbarment proceedings would begin, and the company would need restructuring after the arrests. But for now, Lucas allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. In trying to destroy him, his enemies had destroyed themselves, and he had orchestrated every moment of their fall. The federal courthouse loomed against the morning sky as Damon Brandt was led inside, his designer suit replaced by prison orange, his usual swagger reduced to shuffling steps and shackles. The media gathered outside, cameras flashing as reporters shouted questions about corporate espionage and embezzlement. Special Agent Nelson stood with Lucas in an observation room, watching through the one-way glass as Damon was seated for questioning. 3 months of investigation had uncovered far more than the initial patent theft. "Your brother's been busy," Nelson said, reviewing his files. "We've traced over 12 million in embezzled funds. That beach house, built entirely with company money, laundered through shell corporations." Lucas watched as Damon fidgeted, his handcuffs clinking against the metal table. "How long?" Lucas asked, his voice flat. "Given the scope of the crimes, 10 years minimum. The corporate espionage charges alone." Nelson glanced at Lucas. "He's offering to testify against your parents in exchange for leniency." "Of course he is," Lucas replied, his smile cold, always trying to save himself at someone else's expense. The interrogation room door swung open as Damon's latest lawyer, the third since his arrest, entered carrying a thick folder filled with plea agreements. Damon's face brightened with desperate hope, but that hope quickly faded as the Federal Investigative Bureau's financial crimes investigators began presenting their evidence, bank records, wire transfers, emails, and security footage. It was a meticulously assembled case that had started with Lucas's initial evidence and expanded into something much larger. "Your brother's crying," Nelson observed. Lucas turned away from the observation window. "Send me the transcript when you're done. I have a meeting to attend." Meanwhile, Serena Wyatt paced the marble floors of her attorney's office, her high heels clicking with every anxious step. Her perfectly composed appearance was showing cracks, smudged mascara, chipped nail polish, and last season's designer clothes. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, slamming divorce papers onto the mahogany desk. "He's trying to leave me with nothing after 15 years of marriage." Her lawyer, a tired woman in her 50s, sighed. "Mrs. Brandt." "Ms. Wyatt," Serena interrupted. "I've gone back to my maiden name. The lawyer spread her hands. Given the evidence of your involvement in Mr. Damon Brandt's crimes as well as the documented infidelity, you're lucky Mr. Brandt isn't pursuing criminal charges. Lucky? Serena laughed, her voice tinged with hysteria. Damon's facing prison. His beach house has been seized. And I'm supposed to feel lucky? You committed adultery with your husband's twin brother while assisting him in stealing intellectual property worth millions. The lawyer's tone grew firmer. The prenuptial agreement clearly states that infidelity voids all claims to marital assets. You should take this settlement offer before. Before what? Serena leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. I know things about Lucas, things that could hurt him. Tell him I want to meet. Tell him I can help him understand why all this happened. The lawyer stood up. Mr. Brandt's instructions are very clear. All communication goes through counsel. Now, shall we review the settlement terms again? Serena sank into a chair, her composure finally cracking. I never thought he was always so quiet, so focused on his work. I never thought he could what? Fight back, the lawyer gathered the divorce papers. You have 24 hours to accept these terms. After that, Mr. Brandt will proceed with full litigation and release all evidence of your criminal activities to the prosecutors. Serena's hands trembled as she reached for the papers. Outside the office windows, rain began to fall. Meanwhile, Lucas stood at his office window watching storm clouds gather over the city. Behind him, Maya was organizing files on his desk, updating him on the day's developments. The board has approved the leadership transition plan, Maya reported. With your parents facing tax evasion charges and Mr. Hale's criminal activities exposed, they're eager to show accountability. The bridge project, independent auditors have verified all calculations and construction begins next month. Maya paused, then added, there's one more thing. Serena tried to reach you again. Lucas turned away from the window through her lawyer. No, Maya replied. She came to the office. Security escorted her out. She was emotional, said she needed to explain that you didn't understand why things happen this way. Did she? Lucas's voice was neutral. Send the security footage to her attorney. It'll be useful when we file the restraining order. Maya nodded but then hesitated. Your parents called too? They're facing criminal charges for tax evasion and the IRS has frozen their assets. They're asking for help. Lucas's expression remained unchanged. Interesting timing, he said, sitting at his desk and reviewing construction permits. They weren't interested in my help when they were transferring shares to Damon. Should I respond? Maya asked. No need, Lucas replied. Their new reality is not my concern. The intercom gave a sharp buzz. Mr. Brandt, the Federal Bureau of Investigation agents are here for your final statement. I adjusted my tie, gave it a tug to straighten it up. Send them in, I said. Special Agent Nelson walked in first, two other agents right behind him, each carrying thick files marked with official federal seals. Mr. Brandt, Nelson started, his voice steady and direct, we've wrapped up the investigation into Damon's actions. He laid a folder on my desk and continued. The charges for corporate espionage and fraud carry a minimum of 10 years. We're still digging into the embezzlement, but we have tracked the missing funds going back nearly 10 years. I picked up the document, my signature landing clean and exact on the dotted line where he pointed. When did you first notice something was off? He asked. I answered with the exact date and details. Will there be a trial? I asked once I was done. Nelson shook his head. No. He's taking a plea deal. 10 years in federal prison. Full restitution. He's also agreed to cooperate with us on the ongoing investigations. As he collected the papers, Nelson looked at me a little more thoughtfully. Damon tried to drag your name through the mud. Said you were mentally unstable. But your records and the evidence told a very different story. I stood up, straightened my posture. Is there anything else you need from me? No, that's all. Thank you for your cooperation, Nelson replied. At the door, he paused and glanced back. Mr. Brandt, I have been handling financial crimes for 2 decades. I have never seen anyone document their enemy's wrongdoing with the level of detail you did. You saw this coming, didn't you? I gave him a smile, though it did not reach my eyes. I believe in being ready, Agent Nelson. Have a good day. Once they were gone, I walked back to the window. The storm had passed, and sunlight was pouring in across the city like a new beginning. There was work to do. Rebuilding. My phone buzzed again. It was Serena, leaving another tearful voicemail. I erased it without listening. On my desk were the blueprints for my new bridge design. A bold, revolutionary structure that had the potential to change everything. All it needed was my final approval. The future belongs to the ones who plan for it. 1 year later, I stood before a crowd filled with reporters, politicians, and guests of honor. The bridge gleamed behind me, the sun bouncing off its graceful curves. It was not just a beautiful piece of architecture. It was a masterpiece of earthquake-resistant design. Universities around the world were already studying it. "Mr. Brandt," a reporter called out, "how does it feel, seeing your vision come to life?" I looked up at that bridge, the same one that had cost my enemies everything they had. "It feels like justice," I answered. The rest of the ceremony went by like a dream. Speeches were made, ribbons were cut, cameras flashed. My design was now officially open to the world. Nobody mentioned Damon, who was serving his time in federal prison. No one brought up Serena, who had run off across the country after taking a brutal divorce settlement. Not a word was said about my parents, now hiding away after their financial crimes came to light, or about Rachel, who had lost her license to practice law. While I built something lasting, something meaningful, I had watched their lives unravel one piece at a time. That bridge behind me would stand for generations, long after their names were forgotten. As the applause continued and photographers snapped photos, I let myself smile, just a little. I had come through the fire sharper and stronger. I had won. My revenge, like my work, had been carefully crafted down to the last detail. The bridge behind me stood as a symbol, not just of innovation, but of what happens when you betray the wrong man. 5 years later, the story of what I had done, how I had taken everything back, had become something of a legend among engineers. People whispered about it in conference rooms and referenced it in ethics classes, not as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder. Never underestimate a quiet man who keeps receipts and knows how to wait. I was 48 now, standing at the massive glass windows of my top-floor office at Brandt Innovations. The entire floor was mine. Success had changed me. I had some silver at the temples now, and that hard-earned edge that came with real victory. Under my leadership, the company had grown threefold. That bridge, it sparked a whole new movement in quake-resistant structures. Maya Chun walked in with the morning updates. She had proven herself during the worst of the crisis and was now my chief operations officer, the one person I trusted more than anyone. "Here is the latest on Damon," she said, bringing up the file on her tablet. "His third appeal was denied. Still has 5 years to go, but from the looks of his record, good behavior is not exactly his strong suit." I caught my own reflection in the glass. My smile was faint. "Is our guy still giving us updates from inside?" "Yes," Maya nodded. "He spends most of his time in the prison library, writing long letters to industry contacts. Nobody writes back. He even tried to sell a memoir, claiming he was framed. But every publisher we contacted turned him down flat." She hesitated, then added, "Serena is in Santa Fe now, trying her hand at real estate. Her third attempt at reviving her luxury lifestyle fell apart. Clients kept finding those old news stories about her role in the espionage case. She tried dating another rich exec last month, but after an anonymous tip about her past, it ended real quick." Maya grinned a little at that. "The divorce agreement still holds. She cannot cash in on any books or interviews. She's in a small one-bedroom now, driving around in an old Ford sedan that barely starts." I turned from the view. "My folks? Still in that little condo in Arizona. My dad tried to land a few consulting jobs, but it turns out no one wants advice from a tax dodger. And my mom? She got kicked out of her bridge club after the third time she tried to say Damon was innocent." Maya gave a tight smile. "And Rachel? She's a paralegal in Wyoming now. After the bar disbarred her, she applied to get reinstated. But the ethics board got an anonymous package with all the proof they needed of her involvement in the patent theft." Maya gave me a knowing smile. "Her application got denied," she said. I gave a quiet nod, leaning back in my chair, feeling that familiar sense of satisfaction settle in. "And since I took full control," I added, "our company stock has tripled." The Brandt method for earthquake-resistant structures is now part of the curriculum at major engineering universities around the world. We've signed contracts across 3 continents. And just last week, Engineering Monthly named me the most innovative structural engineer of the century. Maya flipped through her notes again. Also, that beach house the Federal Bureau of Investigation seized from Damon? We snagged it at the auction for practically nothing. Demolition starts next week. And the land's being donated to the city for a public park. They're naming it after your bridge. I felt a grin tug at the corner of my mouth, not wide, but real. The whole thing was going to be filmed. We planned to send the footage straight to Damon's prison cell. Just a small reminder of what his betrayal had cost him. Do not forget, the industry dinner is tonight, Maya said, reminding me. They're giving you a Lifetime Achievement Award. I was adjusting my tailored suit when she added. Some of the board members think it might be a good time to talk about reconciliation. You know, maybe show some forgiveness in your speech. I gave a little smirk. Interesting suggestion, especially coming from men who kept their positions only because they convinced everyone they had no clue what Damon was doing. Before I could say more, her phone lit up. Update from Santa Fe. Serena just lost another job. Her new boss found out about her past. Now she wants her lawyer to reach out about renegotiating the divorce terms. I gave a small shake of my head. The usual response has already been sent. Nothing changes. Section 8.3 of the agreement makes that clear. Maya hesitated for a second. She included a note. Said she misses you. Claims she's changed. I gave a short, humorless laugh. After 5 years, she still thinks emotional manipulation is going to work on me. Forward that note to her therapist, the same one she lied to about her recovery, remember? Maya gave a sharp nod, typing something into her tablet. Oh, one last thing, she said. That junior engineer you promoted last month? His background check turned up something ugly. He's been leaking project details to one of our competitors. My expression turned cold. Already dealt with. I sent anonymous evidence to their board, enough to prove he was playing both sides. They'll fire him today. Official reason? Ethical misconduct. Fitting, Maya said with a chill in her voice that matched mine. He tried to pull a Damon. She looked back at her notes. Our new ethics training now includes a whole section on loyalty. And your story? Required reading. Not the official version, but the other one, the version people whisper about. The one that reminds everyone what happens when someone crosses Lucas Brandt. I glanced at my watch. It is time. The car is waiting. Tonight's keynote is about building trust. Maya's voice held just a trace of irony. How poetic, considering everything. The industry journal had been asking to run a new profile on me, one focused on how I had turned betrayal into something bigger, into a career-defining triumph. Tell them yes, I said. I gathered the papers I needed for the evening. One page included a small reminder, Damon's current home, with iron bars and concrete walls. As we stepped into the elevator, Maya glanced down at her screen. Another update from the prison. Damon tried joining the engineering education program. The warden turned him down after receiving an anonymous letter, one that detailed his history with corporate espionage. I gave a small nod. 5 years and the plan was still ticking along exactly as I intended. Every little turn chipped away at the people who tried to take me down. The elevator dropped lower, taking us to the lobby where the car was waiting. I straightened my tie. Another award was waiting for me tonight. Another stage. Another moment to remind the world who I was and what I had overcome. Back in their corners of the world, my betrayers would be watching. My parents? Still holed up in their modest Arizona condo. Damon? Behind bars, flipping through newspapers in a prison library. Serena? Scrolling through social media, watching others live the life she threw away. Rachel? Filing legal paperwork in Wyoming, buried in the monotony of a job far beneath her old title. And me? I would keep building. Building my legacy. Building an empire. One success at a time. My name carried weight now, not just because of my accomplishments, but because of what I represented. They say you should never underestimate the quiet ones. Especially the ones who keep their mouths shut and their records straight. I do not shout. I plan. And when I strike, it is final. The elevator doors slid open. Maya stepped ahead and held the car door open. I walked forward, calm, composed, ready for the night. My smile was precise, calculated, just like every drawing I had ever put on paper. The car pulled away from the curb, taking me toward another win. And somewhere far away, in a cold prison cell, a cluttered one-bedroom apartment, a small Arizona condo, and a sad little legal office in Wyoming, each of them faced another day of living with what they had done. They lost everything. I gained the world.